Well, okay. Can we get going?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
We'll
roll
go
call.
for it.
Just quick.
Rob Mackey
Here.
and then Aiken
Here.
and Kelly Agrodnik.
Here.
Thank you. Peter Argentine here. We have a quorum, so we can proceed. Start out with citizen comments. Who would like to go first? You have 5 minutes.
Okay, please. Yes,
There you go.
I-
Okay, good luck.
Thank you for coming, first off.
Okay, I was here with a couple other people about 14 years ago. And pretty much the same thing as what we're interested in tonight. First off, I talked to Rudy a bit about the background of members of this board and how you get here. And it's pretty much the same as it was last time. My background, I got my first degree in zoology at Penn State. I got 2 subsequent master's degrees in biology. Then I went back to Penn State, completed all the coursework toward a PhD in biology, of course. And then I switched gears and went into the human sciences. So I've taken a lot of aquatic ecology, general ecology, forest ecology. I've just been through the whole deal. Penn State's big on all this stuff.
I'm sorry, I should have asked you first. Could you tell us your name and the ward you're from?
I'm Bill Hoon, excuse me,
That's okay.
live on Coolidge Avenue.
Thanks.
Um,
That's all. Appreciate it.
and I've been a resident for, I think it's 58 years now. Graduated from high school in '63. We're having a reunion next year, our 60th.
Wow.
Great.
And I've run for commissioner 4 times. I've been all over 5th Ward 4 times. Every house, every apartment I could get into, talk to everybody. And I belong to a group that has been very concerned since the beginning about this deer program. Actually, I got back from a tour in Afghanistan in 2004, and that's when it all started. You know, I was looking forward to nice, peaceful Mount Lebanon, and it disappeared overnight. About 3 or 4 months home, there was a meeting, and Barbara Logan sat in her chair at the end of the area in there and announced that we have a deer problem. Well, at that time, there seemed to be a lot of people that were interested in commissioners' meetings, and there are a lot more people than what we see today in commissioners' meetings. And people started looking at each other. And Barbara had said some things over the years that, you know, okay, that's Barbara. But when she said that, everybody looked at each other and it was like, what now? Well, we were too stunned to respond at that point, but we all got together afterwards and subsequently and discussed this and decided that Barbara Logan had a deer problem, and therefore the entire community had a deer problem. That didn't jive, especially when we started getting into the planning stuff and they started bringing people in to interview. Their plans were pretty much off the wall. You know, we got 34,000 people here in 6 square miles. I've had 3 combat tours, folks. We in the military call that a contact-rich environment. You know, I mean, a lot of targets out there. Also, I've done a lot of shooting. I'm a fired expert on the German heavy machine gun. I've fired all of our machine guns. I was trained as a combat soldier, and I have talked to a lot of soldiers who were involved in combat over the years, and none of them would do this. But hey, this is Mount Lebanon. Well, we brought in people after people after people. There were 100 several times that came in. And they presented information, they did research. We have a ton of folks that are excellent with computers and are into research. They were totally ignored for a long time. It didn't make any difference what we said, which was infuriating because we have folks that are excellent researchers. Nothing that they said mattered. I mean, this was going no matter what. We have people out in the street several times. People don't like that. There are a lot of folks in our group and probably in what you do that love the parks, that go into the parks all the time, bird watchers, folks just wanting to walk their dogs, people that have never been in a combat situation and didn't appreciate when they were thrust into something very similar, in their minds at least, to a combat situation. This is Mount Lebanon. How can we let this happen?
Sorry, your time's out now.
Oh, I respectfully give 5 minutes of my husband's time to him. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
But the issue is, we have had umpteen people move from this township. I'm sure you're not even aware. I wasn't aware. A former commissioner approached me and said that we had 31 millionaires leave Mount Lebanon in 2007 alone. That's an awful drain, folks. These people have money, they support programs, you know, we're always being contacted for donations. We make things happen. You don't want these people to disappear. My group has seen 3 PhDs leave the township over moral issues associated with this. And a lot of folks, just because they don't feel that Mount Lebanon is up to snuff. You know, something's happened here. It needs to change, but they don't see it changing the way things are. And they're upset about that. So that's my input for tonight. I hope we can do something about this. I mean, I've been big into the parks over the years. We've got mature trees, you know, the deer aren't eating everything. They're not buzzsaws that just come through and destroy everything. You know, from my background in ecology, populations grow to the level the environment will support. If you want something else, if you want a parking lot, cut it all down, make it a parking lot. But that's not what we had when I was growing up here, and we don't appreciate the big change. You know, it's actually sad, and we're all upset about it. Okay.
So may I clarify, you said combat situation and moral issues. So what the moral issues in terms of
Well,
what?
killing the animals that don't need to be killed. I mean, that's huge. And that transfers over into other things. If you look at what the Russians are doing in Ukraine, and you say, well, that's Russians or that's somewhere else. Things that happen somewhere else, quite often, if we don't watch out, end up right in our own backyards. And we're not immune from what's going on in Central Europe. We're actually that close to World War III. I was a intelligence officer for 6 years in the military, and it can go just like that. Well, we're having this meeting tonight, and we don't even know what happened. And
The phrase combat situation, these are citizens that feel unsafe because of hunting.
well, they're totally unfamiliar. I know a woman that ran down to Bird Park. She woke up one night. It was dark. She's a runner, and she decided to go out and get her running because she couldn't sleep. Rolled around for a bit and then got up and ran down to Bird Park. Little did she know that USDA Wildlife Management Group was down there and they had set up a bait trap. She didn't see anything. She ran right into it And these guys, what sensible people would do would be pull it off until this woman's gone at least. They didn't. They thought, man, we can get this done before she gets right in there. You know, this woman was definitely not used to combat. So she's not exactly sure how close they were. They started firing. She ran around in terror for her life and headed up Cedar and further uptown. I mean, is that what this township is all about? There should be no one that ever faces a situation like that in this township, in my opinion. And that's why we're upset.
Just for the record, there's no deer hunting in Bird Park right now.
Yeah, I know. I know. They changed that. And I think they might have changed it because we had another member of our group. Once again, woke up early, heard gunfire. You know, she wasn't sure what it was at first. I guess they used silencers. But
That activity was in like the first year of it, right?
It was early. Do you happen to know the year around, Dr. Hoon?
What's that?
Do you happen to know the year that that incident in Bird Park took place approximately even?
which one? You mean where the,
Bird Park,
The baiting
yeah,
baiting
baiting.
incident with the runner.
oh. I could ask her if she still lives here. I'm not exactly
Bait
sure.
anymore, apparently.
There's baiting for, I believe, there's baiting, but they don't corral them in. And I think you're talking about the corralling time.
No,
No.
you mean the trap and shoot thing?
Yeah. I'm trying to understand which one it was, or if you.
No. It was prior to the trap and shoot
Yeah.
fiasco.
Okay, so more than 10 years ago, maybe?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, okay,
definitely.
thanks.
But see, that still hasn't changed the thing. I don't know if you remember, but I used to bring in a round for an well, it was an AR-15 round actually, but it could be fired in either weapon. I used to bring that in and show folks at the meetings what we were firing around. And somebody in the audience got upset because that bullet was in the room, you know, which when the commissioner pointed that out to me, I mean, it's useless without the weapon, but still that person, people do not understand basic killing. They don't understand these weapons and they think they have a very nice community until this stuff comes out. And you have to ask, do we need this? Do we need all these people leaving? Do we need people having really lousy attitudes toward Mount Lebanon because of this? What's exactly the purpose? And that's what the commissioners sent me over here for. Why are we killing deer since 2004? What's going on? Clearly, we failed at whatever we were attempting.
Well, time is up for citizen comments. I don't know
Oh,
at this point what we should do.
we should go through and let everybody who showed up give a comment for their 5 minutes, so that would
Okay.
be 20,
Yep.
20 minutes at most, if.
I'm the only one that plans on speaking.
Okay.
I'll speak unless you. Yeah. Hi, I'm Valda Kweki. I live in Ward 4, Mr. Grella's ward. I also live adjacent to Williamsburg Park, and that is why I'm here. But first of all, I love the parks and the park board. I appreciate all the efforts that you go to. I know somewhat of what this job is about. I actually know what he's talking about because I've been following everything. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort. We've lived here since 1999. I used to live across from Rockwood Park. So it seems we've moved from park to park. So park is what has attracted us to living in each house we've lived in. But tonight, I know you're all aware of what's happened in Williamsburg Park, and it's, that is quite a change that's happened. It looks like it has just been blitzed. And I do want to be careful about what I say because I don't want to upset anyone. So really what we are here for is just, we want to make sure that everything goes smoothly and is corrected and it goes back to the lovely canopy area that it was. We're also here to help. So I don't want you to think I'm here complaining. I did start a Facebook group called Friends of Williamsburg Park, which you're in. And I started it in 2021 when this was being talked about and the dots were slowly going up on the tree. Well, you know what happened in 2020, we dropped the ball and we were not proactive as we have been in the past. In the past, when the last pavilion was changed out and the play equipment was changed out, we worked with the commission and the park board to get the new equipment. So that's what I see happening now. I see us working with you to get the trees back to where they are, any improvements that need to be made. And quite frankly, Williamsburg Park, I'm here to plead with you to please move it to the top of the list. It cannot stay in the condition it is now. It's really, it's a mud pit. It's not useful. The kids will not be able to sled ride there, although I'm sure they'll try and they'll come home muddy. So.
We just wanted to, sorry, I'm Jen Tan, we're neighbors, so same ward. We just wanted to ask that our input be considered. The first we knew about Williamsburg Park being basically decimated was signs going up on the trees informing us of the event. No input was sought from the surrounding areas as to when or how many. And I understand there are liability issues. There's not a storm that goes by that we don't hear a tree crash. I understand all this. It's a risk. It's a risk of life and limb. But at the same time, perhaps it might have been appropriate to see comments from the people that use that park, that live on that park, that are there every day, with regards to maybe staggering it. Did it have to be 90 trees blitzed all in one go, leaving a gaping wound that is a total eyesore? And you're planting tiny trees. We don't have any input into what trees are going there. We don't know if they're, going to be beneficial to the community. Will they provide the right canopy? How about fruit trees? Did we even consider fruit trees? How about sustainable long-term solution to something? And our opinion was just not sought. It was just, you guys went ahead and you did what you're doing, and that's, I suppose, fine, but where we live now is not where we bought it to. So.
Well, I think we can address some of those comments for you, and we appreciate you being here and also your willingness to help and also caring about parks. Before I was on the board, there was a plan put in place to take down mature trees that were now considered safety risks. And that was posted, so it has been out there for a while. I know it's hard to keep up with all the stuff on the board, so that's not to excuse what your concern was, which was the perceived lack of community input. And I don't know, again, before my time, and I wasn't involved in that. There was a very detailed plan. It was reviewed by folks, and then it was also reviewed more recently, and with concerns from the community about keeping a sled path open, keeping an open canopy. So those are the kinds of trees that are being planted. And I don't know, Kelly or Rob can address this a little bit more. There were actually some last minute even revisions just to ensure that it kept the same nature that the people in the community were expressing was desired. I took a day trip over there to talk to folks and there were only 2 people there, so it wasn't exactly a community meeting.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm just saying.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
So that is part of the problem. You took a day trip there. We live there. I've lived behind the park for 16 years. And I'm the one that calls when a tree falls. I'm the one that calls when the water fountain explodes. I'm the one that calls. I'm the one that hears the muffled gunshots when the deer hunting was going on. I heard the misfiring of the the silencer on a weapon, which is all documented. I am there. And so I feel, oh gosh, what is the word I was using? I'm there to help the park, and it's not only my park, I completely
Right.
understand that, but the input of those closest to the construction are usually inputted, usually in the beginning. So that's what we want from now on, and we would have liked that, but we can't do anything about that now. We need to move forward.
I think that is a key
So-
point, and also, yeah. The fact that you want to move forward, that's great too. There was a Parks Master Plan that was just completed. Williamsburg was part of that. As part of that, the whole community and people using the parks, their input was sought. I'm not sure how much of this was in the Parks Master Plan. Go back to. None of it?
I checked, there was nothing about trees. It was about
Okay.
signage and about updated play equipment.
And, you know, a survey went out about the
Basketball courts.
The
and
basketball
pickleball
courts.
Stuff, which is great.
And we like the pickleball courts, we use them, but this was such a drastic, this is the most drastic thing that's happened in a park since the main park was redone. And it didn't have things cut down, so this, I think, was a little more important, and we didn't even get that. So that's what we want from now on.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to the timing on that decision. We, the municipality didn't really have much choice in when we cut the trees down and how we cut the trees down. It became an immediate urgent safety issue that just got bumped to the priority in kind of 1 month.
I completely understand, and you're not telling me anything I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been living there for 16 years. I've watched half the trees fall. Literally, we have lost in 20 years, half the trees are gone. It is definitely a safety concern. People die from falling trees. We know it is not safe. But this, moving forward, we can plan better.
Definitely.
And we also have Pine Cone Park where there's a model for that, where the community's involved in the restoration of that.
Yes, I was there.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, I'm definitely a friend of parks. I've been to every park. We have 13 parks and parklets in our system.
Awesome.
You gotta apply for the sport if you have the time.
Yeah, so I'm there.
So how do we,
So is there, Kelly comes to mind because Kelly's been the most involved in the most recent iterations of the design with regards to what's being planted where, working with the municipality. But I don't want to volunteer you, Kelly, as a
No,
point.
that's-
Okay, but I'm looking for
Yeah,
one
that's-
person at Parks to be the point person.
Yeah, and I can also give you some information also just about the steps that have been taken so far and what steps still are planned. As Mindy and Peter said, the most recent plan, which was developed and reviewed and put into place, did receive some changes over the last month or two as the Parks Board reviewed it to ensure that we were following the intent that was agreed upon in 2020. And those goals were to make the park safe. So replace the trees that potentially were creating a safety hazard with trees that have long-term longevity, have the potential to grow with large mature canopies, similar to what we see at the rec center hillside. So hardwoods, which with tall trees, large canopies, allowing for lawn and recreation underneath the canopy on the right and the left side of the hill, and maintaining a large area for sledding and other recreation in the center so that kids can enjoy that in the winter as they always have, but also making it safer than it has been, because from what I understand, I've never sledded there. I've just been there in the summer. I've had both of my kids have had birthday parties there, so I'm familiar with it. And you know, the trees were really staggered. So the plan is really to draw them off to the left and the right somewhat so that there's less of a hazard during the winter. So that was the intent of the plan. And let's see, 2 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, that there was a crew available, and as you know, they took down the trees. And possibly Phil and Rudy may be able to talk a little bit more about the state of the trees. But what we did was we're taking on a two-phase approach, and we have identified and we ordered trees that were available and are plantable at this time of the year that will succeed through fall planting. And those trees included elm, maple, tulip trees. There were chestnut trees, several different trees that are all large canopy trees that at maturity will have a 40 to 50 foot up to 60-foot span and canopy, and also very tall as well, similar height. So those were placed along the right and the left, and in the process of placing those, we also are going to be following the phase 2 plan, which will occur in spring, which will give us the opportunity to plant oak trees, which cannot be planted in the fall, that they're a fall hazard tree. So we needed to wait to plant those in the spring. So we have, I believe, 6 to 8 more trees to plant. We did stake out the locations while we were locating the trees that did go in the ground. But there is, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. We did maintain a 50-foot wide sledding hill area. So the trees will sit on the right and on the left with a 50-foot buffer in between the two. And we're prioritizing oaks. And there's one or two other trees that I can get a list to you and tell what we're, so that you can see what we're looking at. And if you'd like to offer some ideas or some suggestions, if you have some thoughts on trees, we'd be happy to look at those as well.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
The sled riding area, are you saying that's in the exact middle of the hill?
No, it's off to the right a little
Right.
bit.
Where
Yeah,
was?
so that-
Okay, all right, just
If
wondering.
somebody were to come down over the sidewalk, they would not run into the play structure.
Okay, that's,
So everything was kind of skewed off to the right a little bit,
okay.
Or the water fountain,
Right.
which.
or the water fountain,
Hazards,
correct.
Yeah, that
It's-
might be
that, the
the-
water fountain is a huge hazard. But we still need a water fountain,
Mhm.
so.
Okay, and we
Um,
have some opportunity there we could put a smaller tree or two around the back of it to create kind of a little bit of a buffer there as well. Not
Kelly, is it
necessarily.
okay if I send a
That's gonna make it
email?
any safer.
Yeah,
Sorry,
is
Mindy?
it okay if we maybe start to take it offline and you guys maybe do a small
Sure.
design call or something? And I'll share your email with them.
That sounds good.
Okay, I really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
So I'm sorry. it's
No, go
Kelly.
ahead, Kelly,
Kelly
yes.
Grodnick. All of our emails, at least our names are on the Mount Lebanon website.
I'll send a group email to you, the
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4 of you right now. If you put it on.
Perfect.
Is there anything that can be done between now and spring to address the concerns about mud?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna ask you next.
It's a pretty big area. We're grinding the stumps right now, and if it dries up enough, we're probably gonna run a gill tool or something over that to clean up the area. We're not gonna get any seed to grow this time of the year with the soil temperatures, so unfortunately,
How about
and
this?
because we got a late start.
Sorry, the sidewalks even.
We'll
It's
probably,
very-
we're gonna try and clean the sidewalks off in the circle area up around the near the shelter and playground area, so, yeah.
There's a couple,
Yeah,
4 inches,
yeah.
and it's frozen, so it's
Yeah.
trip
Kind
hazard.
of slippery, right? Yeah, we'll do what we can to do that. But as far as getting any kind of grass to grow or anything,
Oh,
and we don't want to put straw down until we actually plant the grass seed, because that's number one, a waste, and number two, we'd probably have to clean it up before we,
Yeah.
we get the seed, right?
Rake
Seed
the
wall.
straw off,
So
then.
we could resow the seed, right, because we won't get any soil contact then, so.
Hard part's working your way out of the site.
Right.
Once you've committed to a couple trees here and there.
You guys, I'm sure you see how much we tear up the middle of the park for one tree
Right.
halfway through the summer when it goes down, so.
Oh, right.
Kind of the concept of looking at a bigger, you know, fell of.
But once this is
trees.
grassed in, it's gonna probably be a lot drier because it's gonna be open to the sunshine and the air movement and so forth. And we get it grassed in and it's gonna be a thicker stand of grass through the entire area.
We do have several service berries. There's crab apples that are planted there. Stuff that has winter interest, winter berries that get picked over. So we've added some different stuff that wasn't there. In places where, you know, walking around the park, we feel it's a good fit.
We did notice the placement of one tree.
Me too.
We talked about the sledding hill
Yep,
There's a mini sled riding.
that the little kids use, and there's a tree smack dab in the middle
I
of
talked to
it.
that gentleman this morning on that corner house there about that. So we'll address it.
Oh, okay, you already got that one? Thank you, Phil.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you. Well, I'm really glad everyone came in for the public comments. This is so useful information.
Thank you. We're,
There's a slew more of neighbors that we're kind of representing.
Yes.
So, yeah, the circle the park, so we.
and you have to understand, this is very upsetting for people to walk in and see. It is such a drastic change. And I understand exactly why it had to be done. I agree. Just need to make sure going forward, everything is better.
Don't forget about us, in other
Yes.
words.
Yeah.
Yes, and you know, I'm open to any phone calls, knock on my door, anything.
Thank you.
Thank
It's really valuable input. So
Thank you very much.
appreciate your time. We need to move on though.
Yes,
so-
I understand. We are gonna let you get to it.
Thanks for.
No, that's she's great.
Oh,
Thank you for your service. I
Yeah.
appreciate it very much.
thank you.
Okay, so.
See you later, Renee.
Take care, Doc.
Emails down.
We'll do a very quick approval of the November minutes, we have a motion. Motion. Second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Tim, you're on, Tim Nuttall of Lucas Ecology, and he's going to give us an overview of the upcoming forestry and invasives management plan. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for inviting me and selecting me to do this cool project. Just maybe to introduce myself to people who haven't. I mean, I don't know, are there other people besides the people that I've already talked to?
What are we missing?
Yeah, it's gonna be recorded, so, you know, some folks might watch it online as well.
Okay, great.
So.
So maybe it'd be helpful. So I'm an ecologist. I have a PhD in ecology. I have a bachelor's and master's degrees in wildlife ecology and management. I have a postdoc in ecology from Friedrich Schiller University in Jena, where the word ecology was coined in 1866. I didn't have a direct role in that, but in case you're wondering what my company name, Oikos Ecology, means, oikos is the root of eco. And it means the home and all the interrelationships of a homestead, where people interact with their farm animals and their family members and the land and their crops and their homes. And that was the model that was developed. It's where people live in interaction with other members of a community that are all living together. So, I was in academia for quite a number of years. I did research all in restoration ecology. I'm a published author of many papers on the effects of deer on forest vegetation in Pennsylvania and the Appalachian region. I left academia to pursue private sector because I was interested in implementing projects as opposed to studying ideas so much. And because I felt there was an opportunity to actually start to make a difference in communities and to see the effect of your projects on places you live or you know, people you know, places that you visit. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. And started my own business last year. I do exclusively ecological planning and design, mostly for public sector, institutional, some private sector clients. University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, Allegheny Land Trust, some stream and wetland mitigation banking projects, in collaboration with Allegheny Land Trust is one particular road, and now Mount Lebanon. So, so this project this RFP came along. I thought that's a really cool project. I'd love to be a part of that. So, what we'll be doing is essentially an assessment of the natural communities of the main nature parks that were identified in the parks master plan. We do have to kind of maybe, with the help of the board and other input, focus in on exactly which parks are the highest priority to kind of, you know, focus the limited project resources in the place where it will be the most helpful. So my understanding is that from the parks master plan, those parks that are identified as nature parks are Hood Ridge Park, Bird Park, Robb Hollow Park, and McNeely Park, and Twin Hills Park. I'm curious as to why Twin Hills Park is one of them, but it's not in Mount Lebanon. So I can hear the reason for that later. I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
The answer is typically it borders Mount Lebanon
Okay,
and is used by a lot of Mount Lebanon
sure.
residents in that area.
The property is owned by Mount Lebanon, but it's in a different.
Oh, I see. So it actually is a Mount
It
Lebanon
was
park.
purchased, yes.
Yeah,
We
got it.
own the property, but it's in a different community.
Okay, totally makes sense.
Over the border.
I was able to visit all but Twin Hills Park today, very briefly during the rain. Some of them I couldn't figure out how to get in, so I just sort of did a drive-by. And I didn't want to, you know, be accused of walking in somebody's backyard or didn't know where to park. So, but I did take a little bit of walk around Bird Park, and some of the other ones, to kind of I just wanted to see, you know, what we were talking about, to see if my impression kind of matched what was really going on. And I think I wasn't very far off, from my ideas that I had. I see a lot of, black locust that's starting to fall down. You know, I think maybe that was what is happening at Williamsburg Park.
It was,
Okay.
cherry. It was pretty much volunteer trees that were
Okay.
cherry and locust, so the vast majority of it. Multiple leads, you know, splitting.
Right,
like
right,
crosses,
and
things
that's
like that.
what
So,
they do. That was where
Right.
early colonizers, they held the land in place, and thankfully they weren't invasive species, you know, could have been tree of heaven, a lot worse than black locust. You know, they come to the end of their lifespan, and one of the big concerns we have is, well, what comes next? And we have issues. We have deer issues we heard about today that limit the ability for us to self-sustaining forest. So our forest needs help. So they need help in replacing, you know, to provide that next generation of trees that's available when the current canopy dies, either because it was, you know, falling apart, or it blew down, or it needed to be taken down, or it was going to cause an even bigger health and safety problem. You have invasive species coming in all over the place. Bird Park, where I look, just completely full of Chinese privet. And you know, then we have other things like forsythia. It can be a problem, but it's also really pretty. But it's maybe not as big a priority as Chinese privet, because it doesn't kind of spread as bad. So part of that is prioritizing. So what are the most important problems that we need to deal with? So Chinese privet, I would say, is way more important to deal with than forsythia. It doesn't also provide the nice, you know, beautiful spring wildflowers that are the blooms that forsythia does. So we have to weigh those. Those are values. So there's ecological components, and there's also the human component about values. We have to determine what the priorities are in terms of what to do. So the project is an assessment of these parks, and then a set of recommendations about what to do. And the recommendations really have to do with, you know, meeting the ecological needs kind of in rank order with the community needs in rank order, and finding that sweet spot of projects that will help your parks get on a positive trajectory to being long-term sustainable assets for your community.
Great.
So that essentially is what I hope to achieve with you guys over 2023.
And yeah, what's the timeline look? So I missed the whole thing.
Okay, yeah,
Don't
so.
start over, just the rough timeline.
Yeah, so rough timeline is we're going to start kind of getting mapping together. We can start with that kind of stuff with, anytime we decide to just get going. Sometimes you don't want to necessarily draw a project out
Oh, yeah.
really long because it ends up just churning time as opposed to just having concentrated efforts. So probably in the spring, maybe start March. Let's look for maybe, okay, maybe we have a meeting with my collaborators, which is Civic Mapper, so they're a GIS company. Collate all those resources we have from the township. What are the property boundaries? What are the trail maps that you have? Any other kind of existing data you might have. They'll bring in land cover data, so that's available, so they can use aerial imagery to do a lot of preliminary mapping that we go out and ground truth. We could even probably do something as cool as just map individual trees from high resolution aerial photography, which is one of the great things of living in Allegheny County is we have access to super amazing detailed data like that. So we can get like a really accurate, how many trees are there in Bird Park? We can probably get an exact number on that. With, as much effort as it would need.
No, I don't want to overpromise,
But it's not cool, isn't that
it's a
kind of cool?
question that's, it's come up. How many trees are there?
What
That would be
constitutes
a
a
really
tree?
interesting to know.
Right, you have to make, when is it a tree? When you.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah,
Bennett had a great
Exactly.
idea. We should have a community pool. People can guess the number.
Guess the number.
Oh, there you go. Once in advance, start guessing.
What am I looking
Go on.
Number of
Sorry.
M&Ms.
I like that idea. How much do the tickets cost?
Yeah. You can get it.
Was that sufficiently?
Yeah, what decision points do you need from the group here? So we're gonna be working on a reduced scope from your original proposal. So those limitations would create a situation where we're either doing, I guess, less parks or grouping parks together
Yeah,
with similar characteristics. So what would you need from this group as far as the,
Mhm.
what should we prioritize on a list of parks or group them first and then prioritize them within those groups, would you say? Is that probably
yeah. I think that one of the first thing is kind of like just concurrence on what are the most important aspects of the inventory? So the RFP had quite a few things that it wanted.
Right.
And some of them I thought, you can get a very detailed map about where all the streams and wetlands are in your parks, but it's probably not what you need. You would need that if you were gonna build a building, because you need a permit. Township, I guess, for the conservation district. And there's laws that regulate that and all of that kind of stuff, but you just need a rough idea of that kind of information. A lot of that we can just get from,
We probably already have that.
or you might already have it,
We
so
already have
great.
those mapped in our GIS. so.
Features of interest, yeah, I'm just thinking about what were some of the trail conditions, for example. Maybe that's not the scope of this project. What we could do, though, is as we're doing a meander, can do it, a very high level description of the trails are muddy and falling down the hillside. Where we happen to notice them, kind of thing.
But I think we-
That kind of like observations as opposed to like a detailed trail assessment.
Or where it connects to the trees, the forestry part of it.
Right.
Where roots are exposed or the ground is compacted too much. Or things like that. I think that would be relevant to a forestry
Yeah,
study,
right.
if you agree,
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
as opposed to general condition of all trails. and
Right.
So forth.
So I think the priorities, as I understand it, for this project are invasive species, understanding where they are, what they are, and the best methods of dealing with them, and forest health. So from the perspective of sustainability of the forest, but also from us looking at major risks for health and safety. So we don't have an arborist on the team that would be able to look individually at particular trees and say, oh, this tree has oak wilt, or it has, whatever canker, something like that. But we can say things like this tree has been hit by a snowplow and the crown is dying back and it's going to die shortly. Right, like things like that, and that I've seen, I just picked that as an example of something that came up on another project. Or the, you know, even like, it's maybe not even the cause, but this tree has a lot of crown dieback and could potentially be a safety hazard. Or this tree is completely covered in vines. That would be something that would happen more at a forest level, is the Oriental bittersweet is pulling Bird Park down. Right, so I don't know if that's the case or not for.
Or like English ivy.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. English ivy, like, because it tends to like cling to the boles, doesn't have the same negative effect. But Oriental bittersweet, grapes, several native species of vines, they can still get out of control when other factors are at play. So in the urban environment, this is new challenges that these species have to deal with, that they, you know, the forest didn't develop, you know, way back when under those circumstances. So it's not able to bounce back like a forest in the Laurel Highlands would be able to, because it doesn't have all those other human pressures like roads and dumping, yeah, 80 deer per square mile, you know, things like that. So I could get into a lot of details and talk about.
So we have the section in the RFP,
Yeah.
comprehensive inventory.
Yeah.
And I think there are about 8 bullets. So
Yeah,
saying prioritize those 8 bullets.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's like, let's make sure we're kind of under common agreement about what to focus on. I think that there's definitely, it's the invasive species and the forest health.
Right.
But if there are other aspects in here, like, oh, no, we really need that because, you know, whatever. There's some good reason that we also need, I don't know, biodiversity hotspots, for example, right? That could be tough to really assess without a detailed inventory of a particular area that's focused on, you know, across many months.
It's a big man.
Right.
We're
So, but however, if there's things we notice, you know, we will make notes of things that we notice in the field, but we have to understand that, you know, the level of detail you get on something is related to the level of effort you put into it. And what I'm anticipating is there'll be detailed information on forest composition, health and invasive species. And the other aspects will be more kind of descriptive and not comprehensive.
I think too, from our standpoint, Tim, I think what we're looking for is kind of a user's guide, you know, and the best way we get a lot of volunteer hours. We have a lot of folks in Mount Lebanon that volunteer a lot of their time to spend in the park. We want to make sure we're using that as I shouldn't say using it, but we're getting the most bang for our buck, the most efficient use of that. You know, what should they be addressing first, second, and third with the invasives, and then planting small plants and things like that. So, so that we can focus their efforts and guide them to do things that are beneficial to what the end goal is over a 5 or 10 or 20-year period. So I think from a management standpoint, I think that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And, you know, hopefully we get that at the end of the project here.
Yeah,
We have a
absolutely.
user's manual for whether it's right, exactly.
Right.
because
Or what type of trees to plant, you know, to maintain the diversity, like you said,
Yeah.
or, you know, we have an arboretum here. We participated in that with that arboretum project from Chicago, I think it is, or we're trying to, you know, mix different plants in and maintain a diversity in different parks as well. We have a lot of those mapped too on our GIS mapping.
Okay.
So that's available to the public.
Yeah, I think that's all definitely within the you know, the purview of what we can
Okay.
achieve.
Okay.
So
our next step would be to right now, can you get much done this time of the year with winter?
you know, I was actually thinking it's very hit or miss, like today, if it, you know, it was raining, but that's not necessarily preclusive, other than it being very slippery. A lot of these hills or these parks are very hilly, but you know, you can see a lot. It's a great time for certain things. Like I was actually thinking We could do a lot of invasive shrub mapping right now,
Mhm.
because it was super easy. I could, in Bird Park, just off the parking lot, I could go, all right, I'll just follow these trails around, and I was like, oh, yep, all of that's Chinese privet. You know, whereas that might be hard to do in this middle of summer, because you can't actually tell.
Can't tell.
You have to really like
So
go in
overwhelmed.
there. Now, you're not gonna see everything, like I would be able to see garlic mustard,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Or Japanese, well, usually Japanese, knotweed you can see, because it's
Yeah.
still, up and.
Canes are still
Yeah,
there.
exactly. So I'll have to think about if we should actually think about starting. I have a young person from Pitt who works for me on a Pitt project. She's from Mount Lebanon. Her parents live here, so that could be a cool, thing for a local college student to have an opportunity to assist with that.
Would it be helpful if we provided you any information on what we've done over the last, 3, 5, 7 years?
Oh, for sure,
Okay,
definitely.
where we focused our efforts on honeysuckle,
Yeah.
Japanese knotweed, all those
Right.
type of things. We've had several large projects. And we typically spend anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a year on invasive controls
Okay.
throughout the park system. It's really been focused in Bird Park and Twin Hills for the most part. Because that's where most of it has been, and it's kind of centrally located in groups.
Right.
So we've been able to focus our efforts on that. So,
And things that have worked and haven't worked.
okay.
Right, so sometimes, we were on a call a while ago, the topic of a forestry mulcher came up, and somebody said it was not what was expected, or it was more impactful or in a negative way than was hoped for. But I've seen lots of forestry mulcher projects that were great. I had one on my property and I've just loved it, But, what was it about it that it didn't work? Like, and it's not necessarily things like that, or like this Bird Park area where with the Chinese privet. You could do a forestry mulcher in there, but I don't, I think it's just get a bunch of volunteers with loppers. You
Mhm.
could get this whole area kind of on the side of between like the road and that big athletic field. You could probably get the whole thing done in a weekend, with some loppers and 20 people.
We did a couple acres over in Twin Hills, right, with the mulcher it was huge honeysuckle. I mean, it was.
Right, well, right, so
Yeah,
yeah, they're
right.
like this, you can't
Right.
get those with loppers,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, and honeysuckle do that. Privet tend to be more
Right.
approachable with loppers.
Right.
And privet, you can just yank out when they're small. It's very satisfying.
I think one thing we were wondering too was in your prescriptions is, municipality has, or township has limited funds
Yeah.
and we have volunteers and then we have some funds. But, should we, how to roll it out also, like we have all these parks and even the non-nature parks have trees and canopy and so forth and invasives. So, focus on one park and get that clean, use it as a demonstration, then move on to others. Do them all, so we're looking for some prioritization, I think, as well.
Right.
Another question that's come up here is, once you're done, try, because things are funded forward, just try, we've been trying to figure like what might be a rough idea of funds that we, to let the commissioners know of, we're hoping that when your study is done and approved, that we can then get some stuff going, actually.
Right.
Not have to wait another year,
And Mindy, correct me, but
Mindy's commissioner. I
Is
don't know if you-
is it that we need to give some forecast for a number of years in terms of how much it's gonna cost
Exactly.
on a per acre basis?
$700,000.
What?
Because
Okay,
this is the hard thing. We can-
Sorry.
what you get for what? Give us a couple
Right.
options.
We're very, very happy to have this project going. The level of funding that we've had in the past is probably not going to get us very far through implementation.
Exactly. We're like, tell us, in an educated way, how much you need and why.
And we have this, idea that as you work through a park, your cost per acre should go down as in successive years, but we don't
I
really
don't
have
know.
that math.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're just kind of hypothesizing here. So
Yeah.
you tell us, like, if we took an area that's like severely infested, what it looks like from a management standpoint, 5, to 10 years. And I guess it's hard to adjust for inflation, but maybe this is something there are models for. I don't know.
He's not asking for that right now.
I'm gonna say that. We're gonna have to ask for money to implement this, and it can't be just next year we want 30 grand. It has to be like,
Over the next 30 years, here's
Sure.
what we need, and maybe it's the same number every year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. I think there'll be a short-term list of projects that'll come out of this with some high level, planning level, budget numbers. That'll, and we know this because we know like the projects we worked on. Oh, yeah, well, that will cost, they did that, there was 2 acres of reforestation and forestry mulcher and it cost, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, this is similar, we can talk to contractors and get numbers like that. So, nobody seems to ever have enough money for long-term maintenance. People can raise money for capital projects and, particular things like this plan. But it's for some reason, even though everybody recognizes how important parks are for the community, and we had a number of people here that spoke, were super passionate about parks. It's just still hard to get money to put into them, even though they're so important.
Ongoing costs are expensive.
Yeah,
It's just hard. But that's why we want, give us the math behind it and
right.
try to do it.
Need to build a building like Pitt does and put somebody's name on it and capitalize all the long-term maintenance.
That's, honestly, the same problem is true of museums.
Yeah, right, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
it's easy to get, not easy, but
Yeah.
get the funding to build the museum.
Right.
Or a big grand exhibit, but the ongoing maintenance is much harder to get that big.
Yeah, for sure.
The same with all our facilities too.
Capital is always easier.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
When do you think it'll be all done? I'm not holding you to this, just want to think about,
I think like end of next year. Yeah,
Okay,
like
so-
fall.
So you
you know.
think that we'll have it, because fall's a good time to do some invasive management? You
True.
think We'll have some concrete recommendations to start in the fall, or is that a little too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, now are people usually,
Yeah, we
Okay.
put some funding in, an additional 10,000, usually the invasive management's only 5,000, and we added an extra 10, so there's 15,000
Mhm.
to do something this fall.
Thanks, right.
so some of the kind of the time lags in the proposal had to do with an assumed amount of time to get responses back
Okay,
from township, from community members, get feedback, schedule meetings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the better we can kind of just coordinate all that and get things done, the
Mhm.
quicker can all be done.
and you might find something immediately, like, oh, there's some, I don't know, knotweed here, we gotta get this out right now. Or this,
Yeah.
and, we can just prioritize that, we have some money.
Right.
I was just gonna say, to that point, you talked about how we can prioritize from that comprehensive inventory list of bullets. What about the park grouping or prioritization? How do we wanna
Yeah,
take that on, and when do you need an answer? Do you wanna give us a proposal and we?
Well, maybe we
Think
could
about
just, if it's. Like, there were 5 nature parks listed in the Parks Master Plan. And they were Hood Ridge, Rob Hollow, Bird, McKinley, and Twin Hills. Are there some of those that seem like, no, we can't do that? Like, for example, Rob Hollow. Rob Hollow seemed to me like it was a ravine at people's backyards in a public works facility.
Right.
And I don't know if there was anything more to it than that.
McNeely's a piece of property that was purchased to originally put some athletic fields on.
Okay.
It has a real steep slope. It's about 25 acres. Part of it is a really steep wooded area, and then the rest is an old, for lack of a better explanation, kind of where they had gardens and things. There were a couple farmhouses there, and so it's kind of a meadow type field with some other, trees starting to come up through it, so forth.
Right.
Some thickets,
vines.
a lot of vines, a lot of jagger bushes, things like that, berries.
There's no real plan in place for it
Right,
yet. There's
right.
recommendations, but
Okay.
so I
I'm
would
not
say
sure that
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 would be a
would be-
lower priority.
yeah. As far as, I
It
think,
doesn't even have any specified use.
and when you look at the parks that really get a lot of use, it's, obviously it's gonna be Twin Hills and Bird Park. I mean, those are gonna be the top priority.
Well, Polo though does get a
Yeah,
fair amount
to
of
some extent.
joggers and
Yeah,
people.
I was
that
in Rob
finish-
Hollow excuse me, sorry. I was in Rob Hollow on Friday and there were 5 of us within an eighth of a mile walking on on Sunday, 5 of us within an eighth of a mile walking. We were right around noon. I was shocked. I don't usually see that many people there, but kind of a testament to people getting out on a nice day. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple of years ago, I don't know the history of this, but wasn't a new some sort of a plan or a master plan drawn up for Rob Hollow with long-term forecast potential for that park to be redeveloped?
there was there's a budget item, a capital budget item for a parking area down off of Rob Hollow and Kelso. That has been in the budget for quite some time, just to provide an access point on the backside of that piece of property. For folks to park there and be able to access that from the bottom side, other than just, folks that live around the perimeter of the property. And the parking area by the range was created too, and it's kind of a shared parking area for that purpose. So a few cars can park there and access that lower end of the public works area near the new range.
So Bird, Twin Hills, Rob Hollow. How about, I was gonna say Williamsburg, it's a smaller,
Well, but I mean, you have basketball court, tennis court, pavilion, playground area in Williamsburg. That's a different type. In my opinion, that's a different type of park than Twin Hills or Bird Park.
Woodridge is one of those places that doesn't have a really sharply defined entrance.
And it's just a
Right.
conservation area, really, with it's designated as a conservation area, the Hoodridge Park area.
But it's also got problems.
Yeah,
But I mean, the other thing I think we're thinking is that your recommendations for any number of parks will then be translatable to these other
Sure,
parks,
yeah.
because they have pockets, like the golf course has some wooded areas
Mhm.
bordering it all around, but especially it's denser in some areas. So that's one of the things we're hoping. The other point I was gonna make earlier is, as you go, especially if it is finishing in the fall, there's kind of ongoing work that's taking place, so it might be good if somehow that you could be made aware of that in case they're doing something that you think is not,
Yeah,
we don't want to
yeah,
waste
yeah.
volunteer hours, it's
Right.
too precious.
or if it's counterproductive.
Or if
what
it's
the end
counterproductive,
goal
it can
is.
be that, is like with
Right.
Tree of Heaven. So, there might be, and again, it'd be a little bit hard because you're in the middle of the process, but I'm talking about fairly obvious things like, this group is going to go out and do X.
Mhm.
Is that an acceptable thing to do?
when does that Bird?
Oh, right.
The 16K grant.
We have a riparian zone that's being worked on. I think it's being worked on now, in Bird Park. It's where the culvert is, it's kind of, east of that.
Yeah, it's beyond that soccer field that you look down upon,
Okay,
like beyond that.
beyond that.
Yeah,
There's like a little riprap channel that goes
Yeah.
probably
Right.
under the soccer field. It's above ground, then it goes.
it's
in a
piped,
pipe,
yeah,
and
there's a drainage,
then- okay,
drainage
And
system.
then
that's
it
piped
pops out again.
It does, yeah, down below, right.
So they got a grant to do plantings there
Okay,
of various sorts. And some work has already been cleared out of there by the Public Works and some trees and stuff, so.
It's kind of adjacent to Youngwood Road. If you look on the map for Youngwood Road, it would be adjacent to that between, between
Okay.
Youngwood and the soccer field for the most part.
yeah, I'm thinking like maybe we wanna, when is this? January is, everybody, it's hard to get people together in January, because people are just done with the holidays, and like, I just wanna sleep, the coldest part of the winter. But then in February, you started getting some nice days. So maybe we wanna look at just starting up in February with some, look around all these parks and start getting data together.
Familiarize yourself. with
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I think it would be super helpful if somebody could show me how to get into these parks, some of these parks.
Yeah.
And then we start collecting data from the GIS, we get that all together, a lot of that would be helpful for the field work. And then, maybe starting March, we just start, with data collection
Okay.
and,
Why don't you keep in contact with Phil and I,
Yep.
and, like you said, beginning of February, we'll pick a day that's not snowing hopefully and take you around where you want to go. You can do some preliminary work from the, Google Maps or GIS, whatever you want to do.
right.
Figure out a game plan and make it happen for you.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, we need to move on.
Yes.
Thank you. That was great. We're really looking forward to it. I can't tell you
Yeah.
how much everybody's excited
Forward
about
to
it.
it too. Great project to start off here with.
Kelly, anything else on your end? Okay.
Nope. Thank you.
We're gonna stay if you want, but.
Is there anything in the rest of the meeting that you guys think would be useful for me to hear?
Well, this is just, we went through the master plan at the commissioner's request to prioritize things, and invasives and forestry management was one of the top two equally voted, and signage and wayfinding was the other. So it's appropriate, but that doesn't, I can give you this actually. It's just more of a formal statement.
Okay,
Great. It's already been shared with the commissioners, not the statement, but the priorities. No, I think nothing else in tonight's meeting that is particularly relevant.
okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I would say on the township site, there is a tree spreadsheet that Rob and I worked with Ruby and Schichtel for tree recommendations. There's also the Arboretum has a list there, and there's another one that has a list, but
I'll send
or
you
we
a
can
link.
send it to you.
Yeah, I'll send you. a
Probably
link.
easier.
Yeah, probably.
Rudy will send.
Yeah.
And it does, it's not just street trees. I mean, it does denote which ones might be for parks, but it was us to try to pull together information and working off of like Pittsburgh Pittsburgh street trees and so forth. So.
All right.
We did consult quite a few people, actually, PCNR, a number of people on that, so.
Because we have about 10,000 street trees, just so you know, that we manage to, so,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
You know where they all are?
yes, GIS map, absolutely.
Good.
Know what the diameters are, and know what species they are,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, next time you need that inventory updated, give me a call.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
But thank you very much.
Good to see you, thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking this on. We're really looking forward to it.
Thanks. All right. Mindy, you're on.
Mission, I'll
Yeah.
try to keep us on or make up for last time, but,
It's online.
oh, and Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. So I wanted to give everyone an update on the budget, because the budget passed last week. The commission agreed on what to fund and what not to fund, and so there's a lot of parks and recs related items on there. One of them was the invasive management, an extra $10,000 for $15,000
Right.
total. And people are completely on board and looking forward to the results of the study and want to do something, because
Great.
I think a lot because the Parks Board has explained so well, the fact that we really do need to fund invasives, or our trees are gonna die and our parks are just gonna deteriorate. Another big one that got funded in conjunction with each other is a main park master plan that was in the Parks Master Plan. That's for $30,000 in conjunction with an architecture study at the existing ice rink, specifically to see how to redesign the lobby of the ice rink and to incorporate more of the sidewalk or concrete that's in front of that, because the concrete needs to be replaced. It's very expensive to replace it. And our current ice rink is not ADA compliant. So at the very minimum, that architecture study needs to give us some recommendations on how to make that building ADA compliant and overall more accessible. We also want them to look at how to access the pool in an accessible way, and just in general. And by combining those two efforts, we can look at the whole parking, that entire area from the tennis to all the ball fields to the entire main park, obviously including the swim center and I'm gonna call it the ice rink. and it was the recreation center. And so we just funded it. I don't know who's gonna get it or what the RFP is, but hopefully Parks and Sports can help us.
So you do an
Further.
RFP.
Definitely. So one's 50, one's 30. And I don't know what the structure is gonna look like. It's gonna be set at separate, I assume set out separate bids, but maybe the money can be shared depending on how it comes back.
So
Oh, yeah.
130 is just the red concrete area, and then 50 is the whole expanse, is that what?
No, the building itself, the
30.
is 50, but that includes making it accessible to the pool. So parking lot, ice rink, recreation center, and pool all are kind of considered in part of the architecture study, how to make it accessible. Because one idea could be to do an overhead walkway. I'm sure that's gonna be too expensive. We're not gonna do it. But that could get, someone in a wheelchair, for example, from the parking lot to the pool.
And then there's a separate 30 for the main parks plan.
A separate 30 for the main plan, master plan, and that's gonna look at all of the recreation and parks that are there right now, like tennis. Should we put some pickleball in? If so, where? Should that be part of the, are the sand courts working, are the basketball courts working? What else does our main park need? The 2 different play structures, obviously they need to be updated. It's not gonna cover the cost of updating the play structures, but it'll tell us, I
Plan.
hope. Exactly. It won't, yeah, okay.
Okay.
I could give you this, and then some other parks or rec related things. 2 big ones, are the Brafferton Field improvements that was on the capital improvement plan. And I think I can read it, but it was the backstop. We've talked about that here before a few times.
We were curious because some of the work had been done already,
Yeah.
so what will the money go to?
You might be able to talk to it, but there's still a lot of seating.
There's fencing that needs to be done,
Fencing.
right?
Fencing.
Yeah, primarily fencing on that lower side. But our crews removed the backstops, the
Right.
benches, the fences in front of the old backstop areas, right? The outbuilt fence, big part of that, so.
Do you
that's
see
been
that
already
full
addressed.
ADK being used towards?
No, we knocked it down. So that one number was estimated to be $81,000, but because of the work, they took, I think,
It was a
$8,000
reduction,
off.
right. Our engineer estimated that we saved $8,000 by doing the work in-house of what we did.
That's what I asked her. I was meeting, I was like, we did some of that work. And then let me just scan this thing. I got all the. A main park playground fall zone for $139,000. That's replacing the old deteriorating fall zone safety structure with an overlay of synthetic turf, but it got decreased as well.
63,000, I think it was. Yeah.
And so now it got funded for 63,000 based on Phil and Rudy's great work.
Phil's not much. It's just a little lower grade.
Found a
material,
way to do it
Because we
cheaper.
figure we're probably gonna do something with that area at some
Yeah.
point in time in the next, we don't wanna
It
put.
doesn't
up-
have to last 30 years.
Right, we're not gonna put a 20-year material in and
Yeah.
rip it up in
10
5
years,
or
5
10,
years.
right, exactly.
Yeah, I was just, my immediate thought was like with the master plan,
It's gonna definitely recommend removing.
We need to
changing
do
that
something
area.
now. It's
But-
not.
We need something
it's-
now
It's
for
at the
safety.
point, right, just to buy us some time.
okay,
Mhm.
that's,
This is a Band-Aid. Well, I shouldn't call it a Band-Aid, should I? Should I get it called a Band-Aid?
Pretty good Band-Aid. Band-Aid brand Band-Aid.
And then over at North Meadowcroft, we didn't get the ADA Phase 3 basketball courts funded. That is still in the capital improvement plan, so hopefully next year, that's a big ticket item, though, it's $412,000. Probably more likely a bond, in conjunction with other issues, which is not out of the question in a year or 2. But we did get pickleball courts for $60,000 at North Meadowcroft. So I know we just redid the tennis, but there's temporary pickleball lines in there and they're getting a lot of use. So we're gonna put in actual pickleball fencing, pickleball net, pickleball striping at Meadowcroft. And then golf course. The golf course finally got their improvements for the pass for $107,000. That's been on the capital improvement plan for a long time. And sorely needed, I'm told. I haven't played golf.
flavor. So,
The tennis court reconstruction phase 2, Tennis 5 and 6 will be reconstructed, including replacement of the subsurface irrigation system with the hard true surface, and indoor tennis is contributing 45% of that total project cost. That was also recommended to be done last year and was almost funded a year ago, but then we just didn't have the funds for it last year, so. And that's it. I think. Anything else that I'm missing?
I
That's
think you covered it all.
Thanks.
Parks and Rec. Okay, and then other commission updates, we have 2 strong candidates for the police chief, and we did a community forum on Monday. Did anybody happen to tune in at 1:30? Other than, it was good. I was impressed with both of them, so I'm encouraged. And then next, let's see, budget's approved. We have one more commission meeting this year. And next year in 2023, I'm considering not being our liaison for parks and moving over to the Environmental Sustainability Board, because Andrew Flynn is really interested in getting to know parks a little bit more, and we want to expand our knowledge of the different boards before there's a restructuring event that occurs, so that as many people as possible have familiarity with the boards. That's one of the reasons to do it. And I just also think it might be good to have someone fresh in with some ideas to help us, especially if there's going to be some restructuring coming in.
I've listened to the discussion of,
The restructuring?
yeah, is there a PowerPoint out there anywhere about that?
Ian had something.
I thought it showed something, but I searched the website, I couldn't find it.
I thought it showed up on the recording,
I can get
on his
that.
first presentation.
I'm gonna get it, yeah.
If it's still valid, it hasn't, I just would like to just review it and document
Yeah, that's good.
this.
We got it. Got it.
Anything else we need?
No, that's it.
Thank you. New business, any member, new business? Kelly, okay, anybody else? I had a couple of things. That was pretty quick. On the subject of street trees, I searched for it tonight and forget why actually, but it doesn't even show up on the first page. It's not you, but I mean, it's a web issue. I mean, she told me to
On the website.
Use the
yeah.
search engine, so I use the search engine, but it's not even on the first 8 hits on the page, so
Okay.
it's kind of frustrating. For all the work we put into it. I mean, there's other street tree lists there, but this was specific to our township. And then this is just, I'm just gonna throw this out real quick. In watching the guys, actually today, they were breaking up the leaves in the rain. In my yard, I use a lawnmower mulcher. Is that something that could ever be done on a park-wide basis, just mulching the leaves to save? Or it's
Yeah,
already
they
done?
mulch some areas until they get too heavy. Once they get to a point, you can't mulch them.
Yeah,
They don't disappear, they just cover the grass. you know.
Right, okay, just curious. And my last question was, in terms of that 5-year budget.
The capital improvement plan?
Yeah, 5-year capital improvement.
Yeah,
plan
that, yeah.
That you initially, so
Yeah.
does that also get approved and submitted or?
Yes, so every year Keith works with the department heads to create the capital improvement plan. And the commission votes on it on September 1st or by September 1st, I believe, that year. But unfortunately, it wasn't codified into our process that we have a public discussion on it every year. I guess the thought was that it doesn't really change a lot, and we have the big public discussions about the budget, and those are really what gets funded. We have 4 workshops on the budget. They're 3 to 4 hours long. So there hasn't been like a time and place every year to talk about the capital improvement plan. I asked the manager if we can just do that from now on before we vote on it as a commission, and he totally agreed. He's like, we put it on public discussion every year. It might get bumped, like anything could ever get bumped if some of our urgent stuff kind of comes along, but the intention moving forward is going to be that we'll have a public discussion session on the capital improvement, the 5-year capital improvement plan every year, once a year. Now, that's not enough time to get through all, 60 items or whatever that are on that thing. But at least it's a plan of a placeholder in the place.
I know it's several years down, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but is turfing a bird park still in that?
Nothing has changed since the last
Okay,
one.
so that
So
wasn't it.
the one in the summer or whatever that was approved September 1st is the capital improvement plan. There won't be another one until next summer.
So under new business, I would like to, at the next meeting, discuss earthing of Bird Park. That will be in old business, how we work it. And just because we won't have time to do it, get into it tonight. Okay, Parks Master Plan prioritization. Kelly, this was kind of last minute that this was typed up. My work is kind of accelerated. And it's really just kind of codifying our recommendations so that we can send this to commissioners. But I already presented it orally at an earlier meeting, at the meeting after the last meeting we had. So I'll read it aloud to you, not that long. So it's Parks Advisory Board recommendations for year one prioritization of Parks Master Plan items. In approving the 2022 Parks Master Plan, Mount Lebanon commissioners requested that the Parks Advisory Board prioritize issues to address in the coming year. The Parks Advisory Board has extensively reviewed the Park Master Plan by recommendations for each park. We highlighted a number of recommendations with an emphasis on site-specific items that were recommended for multiple parks and will have the greatest impact throughout the park system. A ranking vote resulted in a tie, typo, of our top two recommendations for funding and an action. And then underneath it, parks listed had this recommendation in the Parks Master Plan. It was surprising actually, as I went through the Parks Master Plan, that it did actually show up on each park. So improve signage, wayfinding, and communications. And it's basically every park that she listed. So we're not suggesting that all those be tackled at once, but it's basically showing that it was an item that was listed for all of those. Invasive species study and funding initial recommendations of study. And that lists the parks again that were listed in the plan. Two additional items tied for second place in the ranking vote: Meadowcrop Park Phase 3 and Trail Management and Restoration Plan to guide future work, including by volunteers. And that was listed in Bird Park, Hoodridge, McNeely, Rob Hollow, and Twin Hills. Other areas of concern that rank lower but were still deemed important include accessibility improvement in parks. And that's Bird Park, Hoodridge, Rob Hollow, Twin Hills, Country Club, Highland Terrace, Iroquois, Rockwood, and Williamsburg. And refresh playground equipment. And then main park planning. I didn't mention where the refresh playground equipment was, but I can add that in. So main park planning has already been addressed, as Mindy said. So I thought we could do another document, perhaps at the next meeting, consolidating all of the items that we listed as risks for the park. As Rob came up with that categorization when we were initially going through, and just to provide it as guideline for risky areas that might want to be addressed sooner rather than later from the Parks Master Plan. So what I'd just like to do tonight is if there's any questions or discussion, open up for discussion, and then just take a vote on whether it's approved. We voted on the items last week. Any questions? And I can send you a copy right after the meeting, Kelly, sorry.
And then just only question is, what happens after you vote on it? You send it over to me?
Send it over to you
Okay,
guys
awesome.
to share with.
Then
all
I
the
can share,
commissioners.
thanks.
Okay, we have a motion to approve
Motion to approve.
recommendations. Second by Bennett. All in favor?
Hi.
Any no opposition, so passes unanimously. I consider there's a typo, so I'll fix that and send it to you.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Thank you. Okay, good, perfect.
Okay, next. Report on communications and signage. And since we're running a little bit behind, if you guys could maybe, because we've circulated it, maybe keep it to 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, so Milano can do designs and all that, and all they want from us is, give us an estimate on that is, Mindy wrote this email, so I'm citing her, but scope, so they want us to identify what types of signs, where they would be, mark them up for them. We have till the 15th of December, Kelly and I are.
I just kind of wanted to wrap it up before the end of the year, but if you can't, that's okay. I'll tell Kalano, we'll pick it up, January
I
10th
think we
or
have,
something.
yeah, So,
Okay, and if it's easier to work over the break, I just didn't want to put it, I just kind of like to wrap everything up.
that's the next step. We're gonna get, an estimate from Colano on doing the design work, and Kelly and I are gonna provide Dr. the parks to.
Thank you, both. If you need a hand, let me know, because I know you're handling multiple tasks, so. Or let anybody on the board know if you want a hand. So let's see, great, thank you. Thank you both again, and thank you, Mindy, for pushing that forward. So, and I know, I guess, communications, it's something, I don't think we have time tonight, 'cause we spent a lot of time, but maybe something that should be addressed down the road to prevent, how do we prevent situations where, clearly it was in the plans and everything, but the people who were here tonight who care a lot about parks felt blindsided by it, so we set out the thing, but perhaps there's another way to do it, so I think it's worthy of discussion in a future meeting. So, if we're making big changes, especially with invasives or forestry management, letting communities feel like their voice is heard.
But that's feedback on every project.
Yeah.
It is, and I think we're just like, we're close to that, but other than putting a flyer on people's doors, we don't have a way to reach them, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Like there's not a mass email or a sign up or whatever, they can geo, but if everybody would sign up to our website, we could make a website and give us their address and their email address, and then we could geocache an area, we could, it's possible to target communications, but we don't have even 50% of people signed up for,
Like in Pinecone, way in advance, you put up signs saying what was gonna happen and why.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well. And it was cheap. It's basically a barcode or one of those QR codes that someone can then follow to a Facebook page for information. So maybe just, if we're gonna do a project that is, I don't know if you put a dollar figure on it, or otherwise, how do you assess the impact? You're gonna do a project that's over $5,000, just put some QR codes up, but then it has to link to something.
Yeah.
And we had volunteers do that, so, it's gotta have somewhere to go.
Well, also maybe having a community meeting on site with putting up a notice in the park. So the users who are walking by will see that it's coming up. On a separate note, I asked for a community meeting of the gardeners to meet with David, and we just, after several requests, it just got dropped. I think that would have been valuable for people to hear, what's feasible for him to hear concerns.
And I think like with Pinecone, planting something where there's nothing, people definitely have opinions on it, but taking down trees is just so upsetting to me too. Everybody's gonna be upset when you take down trees.
That's the challenge is.
Yeah.
We want feedback,
Yeah,
but everything can't be an open, things have to move.
mhm,
So how do you balance communication and outreach with
communication, transparency, process, input,
things have to get done?
yeah,
So it's a tough one.
that's a really tough one. Like you said, it comes up for every project, or people just don't care, and then it's like, well, why are we doing this anyway? Nobody said anything. It's not true, tough.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
but point taken, like we gotta think about it, think about open the ideas, QR codes.
Records are good, very easy.
So, the next thing we were gonna discuss is, creating a short list of priorities for next year and, also, talking about chair nomination. The elephant in the room, so to speak. So, and I can, I was just gonna do a look back, but, we can skip that even till January or not at all. But, I'd rather just talk about this a little. So for next year, we don't want to there are things that come in that are unexpected. So, and even like, you know, we'll be talking with Tim down the road and dealing with that. I mean, maybe that's,
Yeah, that
That-
has
that's
to
a
get on the list of
priority.
the priority.
okay, so. We won't use the whiteboard since you're here, Kelly, but so one is going to be, working with Tim Nuttall and on the forestry and invasive management plan. So that's number one, one item. And then, we have communications and science. That's clearly another item that's continuing and going to be ongoing. And, do any members have other items that they would like to see us working on next year?
There's the Parks Master Plan and Rec Study Architecture. I don't know.
Someone's
I think Parks
gonna be
Master,
assigned.
The main park. Yeah, the main park master.
Well, that's pretty much under our purview, so,
Yeah, that's.
together with sports, of course, but I mean, that's.
But the
that's
RFPs will go out.
responsibility.
Yeah, I wonder when we'll start there. I mean, probably next year.
Yeah, well,
Let's put it down for now.
Park
Main
master
park master
plan.
plan.
I guess Ian's gonna handle that,
Yeah. We'll do that, but.
I mean, with input from others, but.
Well, Kelly, I didn't ask, I assume there's no updates on the comprehensive.
No, nothing. Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't. Actually, one small update. I did notice in the principal's newsletter, no, actually it was the PTA, it was either the PTA newsletter or the principal's newsletter that came out from Markham this past week, did include a blurb about the comprehensive plan, asking for feedback, letting people know what was happening. So
Nice.
that was great because I had stressed that as a possible way to get feedback from folks, and I was glad to hear that I don't know if it was my recommendation or suggestion, but they did reach out to the schools. So that's the only update that I have.
Can I just add one thing? There was a PowerPoint slide in Ian's presentation. Which of these issues should be a high priority for Mount Lebanon to address during the next 10 years? Number one, recreation/park facilities.
That's what was voted.
That's in terms of the respondents to the survey. That was the most common.
Yeah, I thought it was pedestrian safety and recreation and parks.
Recreation was one, pedestrian and streets, cyclists. were
Yeah.
two.
Sidewalks, those were the two takeaways I heard. Parks and recreation facilities was a really broad bucket, and I asked him to drill into that for me in future surveys and outreach kind of groups, so. He'll come back with more specifics, because that means. I didn't know you asked 10 different things.
What I thought also he was gonna try to avoid things that were already covered in the Parks Master Plan. Doing that, more looking at connections and pathways and things like that.
Yeah, not so specific, but if people bubble up and suggestion, then, well, And a lot of the next thing, in addition to surveys, are the focus groups, so that's talking to the boards in depth, talking to people from the high school in depth, and having these kind of like focus groups where you can get more nuanced information, I think, than in like conversation formats. And some more surveys, but that's the next big phase.
Um,
Can I add for the 2023 priorities, one of the items that we talked about at the last meeting was coming up with a design guidelines sort of document or handbook, looking at all different items, all different features that we see in the park. So trail materials, natives versus non-native plants, benches, the materials that we use. So we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, and I was hoping to start working on that over the last month, but I didn't have a chance to. So I do have that on a list for myself to start working on.
Yeah. I think we mentioned that in the call, we had with you, Mindy, that was something we were hoping, yeah, so that things kind of look the same. It feels like this is a Mount Lebanon park, a different kind of, it's a different park, but it
Right.
still feels, and that's part of the signage and branding, if you will, but also, I guess, it gets back, again, I don't know because of limited funds, but, when We have hodgepodge benches and things like that,
Yeah.
which
For
some ways is
future.
great because it's sustainable and reusing and recycling.
But people want to donate stuff all the time. They
Oh,
want to
really?
give a bench.
Oh, a new bench.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
want to give a new bench or, and whatever we can offer them, they're happy to. We got a pavilion mostly donated, but we need the standards.
Yes, it's the same, just like all great parks have an overall design plan to them, including the plantings and things, and I particularly, when I talked with Kelly, I think, I think Cedar Boulevard itself, which borders the park, could really use some planning that incorporates it into the park or takes advantage of the park that's there, but that would be part of the main park planning.
I'm not suggesting these things make the list, but I just have heard from residents that both residents near Brafferton and residents near Williamsburg want a design, kind of want some attention for a refresh in the parks. I'm not sure what they want. I mean, I've heard from a few people, but there's not consensus on whether that's a play structure or trail management, or what that is.
Well, I mean, both of those are kind of under a work in progress, and there were a number of items in the Parks Master Plan that was kind of, which comes first, the cart before the horse, in terms of planning. Bradford is certainly one, that needs some planning and I mean, you were there as part of that community hearing that we asked for and, so I don't know what the next steps on that are though.
I don't know,
That's
I
something
don't,
that's mysterious.
yeah, I don't either.
And Danya was asking about that at
Yeah.
the last meeting, and I told her to talk to you, so.
Yeah,
So, I mean, Bradford and I could see, is Williamsburg a project that we would need for next year?
I only just tonight sounded like they wanted some help, but maybe it's just what the planting is.
I think once the trees start to mature some to an extent and the grass seed takes next spring.
Yeah.
It starts to fill in and you see that it's a grassed area. I think it's gonna look 100% better.
Yeah.
It's just basically, it looks really bad right now because of all the work, the removals and the stump grinding and it's been wet, so it's gonna
That's
get,
what it is.
yeah, it's not gonna get anything but better from here.
As far as next year goes, this is going along with what Richard was talking about, but also ties in with the Thornwood project, the Bird project, and then that stormwater management fee funding. How does the Parks Board assist, facilitate, support stream
Rehabilitation.
Taking place in the parks?
that's taking place, or it could be planned for the future in the parks that, we capture some benefit because it's gonna be helping the park habitat, but also help public works and making a case for things. Is that something we have as a, on our list of 5 priorities for next year?
We have a dedicated fee structure for that, funding source with the stormwater fees. So we're using a portion of that to offset the cost of the stream remediation and stream restoration. Plus, we get credit for that with our MS4 permit as well. I mean, it's part of our O&M plan. It's part of our process of improving the water quality in Mount Lebanon that comes out of Mount Lebanon from the streams. So I don't know that, we could get verbal support from the board, but it's already actively being pursued by Public Works or engineer. And it's something that it's a necessity. It's something that we have to do. We're mandated by the state to
So I'm
comply with our MS4 permit.
looking at how it can be, how we could potentially help communicate the value of this, either through the pre and post water quality sampling or some habitat assessment. And just basically, I think people might think, well, they're just, that's another project we're gonna put the money into, storm sewers. They're not getting the message as to what it could do from a recreation and habitat standpoint. That's
We
what,
give several presentations to the commission during discussion session throughout the year to number one, hardscape projects where we replace end walls and pipes and things like that deteriorated pipes. And there's the other part of that whole equation, which is stormwater that's going through the streams and so forth, once it reaches the stream. So that's part of the MS4 presentation and stormwater management presentations that are given to the commission at least once, if not twice a year. There's a recap of all the projects leading up to that point of the year, usually in the fall, the Gateway gives. And it's emphasized in all those presentations. Maybe you might want to go back and look at some of those, the importance of the stream remediation and what it means to the MS4 program for Matt.
Yeah, I see where you're going, Rob, and I do think there's an opportunity there to kind of think about it, you know.
But it could be a one-off. It doesn't, it's just, this is something that's happening in the parks. There's money flowing to it. There's commission support for it. And I think we could get more traction.
Capitalize on that.
Yeah, get more
Yeah,
value out of it.
yeah, and
Somehow.
maybe it's a conversation with Gateway, or like, I'm not sure, even ESB, you know, Environmental Sustainability Board. To just, yeah, how can we do that?
So just an idea.
They're really good projects. I mean, Thornwood turned out great. That was a really, I mean, we've done Thornwood. We did a big chunk of Bird Park, 600-700 feet of Bird Park. Beyond 700 feet, and also down at Iroquois as well, next to the basketball court. So
But there again, I think Kelly's, you had some recommendations for some of the trees that failed or plantings that failed on that area. So I mean, that's some
Yeah,
advice that
yeah,
could be input.
right. And I had met with Phil and Dave. I can't remember his name, but from Ecological Restorations, we were looking at what may have made it, what didn't, and I think what would be wise would be doing a survey in the spring, once the leaves are cleared, once things start sprouting, taking a look at the areas that were restored, and then also there's the northern face of the stream that could use some attention, and making some recommendations there for what we could do next. To
Yes.
really just to fill in what was browsed by deer, and there may be a little extension area that may benefit.
Yeah, thank you again for doing it. Kelly, you're really doing a lot, so thank you. Well, we have 6 items, and not to preclude that we can't add another to the voting list, but we'll take a vote on these in January. And do you think we'll have a new member in January?
No, I don't
Okay.
think until March.
Okay.
But that's the,
And
someone already resigned, Albert.
Albert left, yeah.
Yeah, and we just didn't fill anybody just because it's an off time. We only have one more meeting this month. Already very good.
And
So-
before we wrap up this conversation, just one other item is the trail restoration. Looking at trail restoration and possibly just starting with a survey of what each of the parks, what condition the trails are in. And I think that this could probably go hand in hand with the design guidelines or the standards, because this is something that has been brought up at numerous meetings about the various materials that are used in the trails more often in the natural areas than the neighborhood parks. But that could be something that an effort that maybe could be started in 2023.
We could do it could be a volunteer survey of the trails in the various nature parks and wooded parks, and then from there, I guess, seek guidance, or if we had a plan, or down the road, or just looking for standards that we could then, if you guys had resources that you wanted to share with us or on that. And again, it would give guidance for volunteers as well. Okay, so that's number 7. This is kind of connected to that. I was going to mention establishing park boundaries, which Tim alluded to as part of his work as well. But some of the trails are in private property, and then conversely, we have some private property, including in public lands. So, honestly, I don't think it, we have these 7 other items, and I don't think it scales to those, maybe an element of those. So I'll withhold putting that on the list, but I just wanted to mention that. So we'll vote on these at the next meeting. We can discuss them further at the next meeting. Unless there's anything else.
I think the most recent announcement of 2 more of our common shrubs being added to the list of noxious weeds or banned for sale, I think it was privet and burning bush.
Yeah, burning bush,
So now we
really
have,
popular.
the barberry, burning bush and privet. All 3 of which are pretty common throughout our park system. It doesn't have to be a priority necessarily for this board, but like. What do we do to, because I think they cost more money than they add in value anyway, because they have to be pruned. Like, I don't know, Bill, what do you think about?
Instead of pruning them, taking them out, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is there, like, what are the trade-offs to this and
Location of where they're at and what you're really gaining. You know, like Tim was saying, kind of the big bang of what you're doing, on one hand, it might look great, but what is it threatening? So I think you have to mix that with your daily operations and find when it makes sense to do that.
I see.
I don't know if it's a sole effort of today, we're gonna send a crew here, here and here and remove 4 bushes. I don't know that you
Yeah,
stagger your resources that way.
so maybe it goes in the design guidelines?
That's what I was gonna say. But I think also
And then-
Rob is asking for a kind of a cost benefit analysis, like what's the cost over time of trimming these bushes that are invasive in the first place? There's also then Tim's assessment of, is this really a big concern? It's big enough that it got on the van list, but I honestly don't know how much of a threat it is to our parks, and I think Tim would probably address that as well. But I think that would also be in any kind of master design plan of our parks would be, what do we do with the existing shrubbery and all? Some I think might fit into whatever design standards we come up with, and others might not.
Yeah, I just think if it came down to ripping out a handful of shrubs because you were there to plant grass for something else. And you need the support of the Parks Board to tell the community, well, actually, those were invasive species and we removed them because they harbor ticks and blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that's something we have grounds on. So.
Yeah, and again, in some ways, we're here so the public can come in and talk to us and vent their, concerns to us and kind of save that from you guys shouldering all that as well. You may have shouldered it as well. But that's, I think, part of, what our role is. That we represent the public. So anyhow, so we'll vote on that in January. I'll send this list out to everyone and now in terms of the chair, does anybody want to step forward to be chair? Well, how about can I make an offer you can't refuse? How about,
did you talk to anybody else that's not here though?
yeah, I
Okay,
talked to
good.
Danya at the
Okay,
last
perfect.
meeting.
Thanks.
I didn't email them today, but I could co-chair with someone if somebody wants to share the burden. It's not a huge burden, but it's, just putting the agenda together and trying to formalize some things and keeping things going. Do I have any takers?
He's saying Ben.
I know, I nominate
Kelly.
Kelly.
I really wish that I could.
He's doing a lot.
I just can't, my plate is overly full right now. Next, depending on how the restructuring goes, next round, I think I've told several of you that it was, that, you know, as soon as I got notice that I was approved to be on this board, I also, you know, I went on the, I started a new job and then I started something else and then I'm a VP on the PTA. There was just too much happening at once. So I'm trying to keep it together.
Yeah.
Next year, if,
Yeah.
when this happens again, I will likely be, you know, willing to jump in then, but as of right now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water and be able to contribute
Yeah.
on
Well,
such a valuable project.
How about this, at least for now, until someone steps forward? I mean, in January, I can still, you know, prepare the agenda for that. and-
I'll do it.
You'll do it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. And
That's great.
just like
Thank
Richard
you.
has helped me,
Yeah, that's why
I can be there for your
Thank
support.
you.
I was just gonna say, like, if I can't do the agenda one month, you know, I can ask one of you, but that's great. Thank you, Rob. Hey, we appeared. Oh, we have to take a
And
vote.
Rob-
All in
yeah, Rob-
favor of Rob being chair?
I nominate Rob.
I second. In favor?
I,
Opposed?
No,
Okay, unanimous for Rob Mackey being the chair for next year.
thank you.
And I guess the only thing I need to say as having been chair for this year is I think people really, the entire board really stepped up this year and really helped out a lot in all of the efforts we were working on. And also, of course, we couldn't do anything without you guys, and we appreciate all that you do, and always, as I say, very impressive to hear Phil's maintenance list that we hear at the end of the meeting. I think, you know, when we do these the park assessments, it's kind of hard because we're kind of like the fact that we're doing a park assessment, a park site visit is we're looking for problems, so it may seem like we're I don't know, complaining too much or nitpicking, but it's just kind of like, as you've said, you want kind of our eyes and ears. It's not saying like this has to be addressed right away, although when we do see a safety issue, we do point that out. But and I think it's something too, maybe to think about next year is whether we need to, I don't know, are these site visits helpful, or might it be better that we use our, you know, if we focused on one thing like design guidelines or something else, or do you still like these site visits?
Just my general opinion of it, is that some of the things you mentioned in between the times you were there and came to the meeting get addressed
Already,
already. Like the recycling cans, those get pulled in seasonally, repainted, put back out. Ones that get tagged and whatever, we get to them when we're in the park and we're working logistically in that area, and we swap them out. But it, like to your point though, it's helpful to have eyes. We're two people that, you know, have 13 parks and over 10 facilities.
just doing our site visits gives us a sense of like how much you have to do. I mean, because it's
all
just
good.
visiting one site takes some time.
Yeah, I mean, tell us your list, we get to when, you know, when we can, and
I probably wouldn't make it to all the parks each year unless we did the site visit, so I'm,
it's good to do.
yeah.
That's-
I like the motivation to do that.
Okay, great.
Would it be better if we compiled the information in advance of the meeting? I know it's hard though, because we all get to them at different times. And then it's usually last minute, like I went through a couple parks before a meeting, so I would have my list, but there's a lot of administrative data collection stuff that probably is burdensome. In that if it comes in different, streams, if we could maybe try to consolidate,
Create a shared document, so we're not all repeating the same thing too,
that's a good idea.
and
I thought we had one a couple years
You
ago.
can use Teams, you can use
Yeah.
a shared document on Teams. I think everyone has access to Microsoft Teams.
Or just
Even
put a
the-
Google Doc and then
we
send
could
it
do our
out.
own Google Doc and send it.
Even the format of it for me is helpful. I'm just kind of an off the cuff, get it done. It's kind of like what.
You do like-
job is every day. So what I'm saying is when you come in and starts, going around the horn, so to speak. I jot stuff down, it gets to the superintendent the next day. And then whatever wasn't already corrected in between when you saw it, when you came to the meeting, we just go out and bang it out. I mean, that's just kind of how we operate. It's pockets of when labor is available. And that's why I work
It depends on
closely
the
with the
time of the year.
superintendent.
This
So
leaf
that's kind of
season,
helpful.
you know, it's gonna be put off for a month or two possibly,
Right.
unless it's an emergency or a priority or a hazard. That's gonna be addressed immediately.
So I'll think about it, how we could maybe ask Phil for next year, how we could, if we change anything, what we would change about how we collect that information.
The one thing I'd advise, like, in terms of trying to keep meetings on time is as much stuff that can be sent in advance. Like I should have sent this in advance to review the recommendations, but I did it right before the meeting. So I've been meaning to do it forever. So but yeah, I think as much as we can share that stuff ahead of time and that keeps the discussions more minimal, because we've already seen it. And also, speaking of which, we've got 5 minutes left, so again, thank you guys for all you do. Bill,
This month was kind of focused over at Williamsburg. Obviously with the removals, we got that done in 5 days. That was taken out. Right now, our efforts are on stump grinding, so within a week and a half, we removed trees, planted 22, and we're about probably, I'd say a little bit over halfway done with stump grinding. Some stumps take longer than others, obviously. Some of the rotten ones just flake right out and we keep moving. So it's case by case as we go through there. Seed, starter, fertilizer, everything's on hand, ready to restore the park. It's all weather related. To Mindy's point, there's a process and we got to the point where we could do the work and we did the work. We also, to your point, Rob, while we were in there, removed a big section of Hughes by the playground equipment. Some older plantings in the cul-de-sac island, some other invasives that were going up the pathway. So when we're there and it makes sense, we'll keep that in mind. It's a focus. You guys will look at that. Other than that, just normal end of season maintenance. Kind of around the parks as a whole. We walk all the mowing areas to make sure leaf removal is done by the contractor adequately. That takes up a good bit of time. So that's where we're at.
I'll add that walking path was finished yesterday, from Beadling crosswalk down to the new public works entrance over up all that stuff. It's all in, it's done, looks really good.
Great.
Contractor did a great job.
just reminds me of the last thing. Should we have a name for that little parklet by the range?
Phil's Hill.
Hills Hill. I think it's something to discuss in the future, Rob, if you know, talk about communications and signage. It's a park, so people don't know about it. It doesn't have a name.
I mean, it's in Rob Hollow Park, so I'm not sure if it would,
But it's a little different and it was designed for accessibility specifically, so I think it's, but not on the agenda, we can talk about it some other time. So, well, thank you all. The meeting is adjourned. And appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Rob, for taking over.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Days, everyone.
Yeah, that's right.